But we're moving right along. Up next, we have Jessica Thrasher with the Colorado Water Center. And as Karen is getting her presentation up there, Jessica is going to talk to us a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion, and water.
Thank you.
I have lost a hand mic. Is there one sitting up there on the podium?
There is. Would you like
Okay,
it?
good. Nope, you're good. I just wanted to make sure I found it. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Thrasher. I'm not only a water professional, but I'm also an educator, so I tend to be lengthy. So I will be paying close attention to the time, with help, I'm sure. So we're going to be talking about the new focus at the Colorado Water Center on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. What water equity means, what a diverse water workforce looks like, language justice, and then how you can get involved. So to start off with, I'm sure that Karen has talked about the Colorado Water Center, but these are our three main focus areas on water workforce development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and agricultural water management. So for today, I'll be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So my position is new to the Water Center. I started in March, and it really shows the leadership of the Colorado Water Center in leading the way in making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is being talked about in the water space. It's a huge gap that we're seeing right now, and there's a lot of room to grow. So I'm very proud to be working with Karen and John and the rest of the Colorado Water Center staff on this very important issue. As a part of this program, there's a lot of building going on, which I love. I love program building. It's the exciting, it's kind of the messy time of finding out opportunities to really plug into what the community needs are. So we're very nimble and flexible. Some of the programs that we're working on right now are discussing equitable access to resources, ways to diversify the water workforce, and integration of DEI practices in the water field. And I'll also be talking about the Water Fellows program, which is a fantastic program working with students. But before we get started into that, I'd like to paint the picture of the problem. I think we can't start talking about solutions until we know what the problems are. So to talk about environmental injustice, this has been put forth by the Protégete Colorado Latino Climate Justice Policy Handbook. And I'll be providing these resources as well. The blue are links that you'll be able to access after you receive the presentations. So there's different community members that have different access to environmental benefits. This is different access to green spaces, clean water, and air, and also exposure to environmental harms such as pollution. I was recently at a presentation where we had some panelists talking about genetic diseases, and I always learn something from water presentations. And what they were talking about was how when we go to the doctor and we fill out our past medical history, we can talk about, did your grandmother have this disease? Which side of the family? And what she said is that there's new research being done right now to see if these diseases are actually genetic or if they're caused environmentally because families have lived in the same spaces with the same environmental harms for generations. So the diseases aren't actually genetic. And that opened my mind so much in a horrifying kind of way. But it's not something that I'd ever considered, that might be something that impacts people for generations. And she was talking about, she lives in Commerce City, and how her son gets nosebleeds and how she's anemic, and that's because of the poison in the air and the water that they experience. Additionally, extreme climate events impact those who are most vulnerable. And so those are low-income areas, those are the people who do live on the floodplains and who are impacted by the severe weather that we have. So these are droughts, these are also floods. Additionally, mobile home parks. This recently came into my attention because I had a CSU student come up to me and say, I live in a mobile home park on Hermione, and I have had raw sewage coming up in my bathtub. My water gets shut off, and I don't know when it's going to get shut back on or turned back on because it's shut off without notice. And there have been cases of lead in my water. And I had no idea that was impacting people here in Fort Collins. When you think of issues like that, I would think of issues in third world countries. not my neighbors, and especially students. I was thinking about how can this person learn when that is what they wake up with and have to deal with first thing. And so I have been talking to a lot of folks about mobile home park issues, and there was a recent House bill passed, House Bill 1287, with the tireless work from Pro Tehete, Beatriz Soto, and also Representative Elizabeth Velasco, and both of them previously lived in mobile home park communities. So this is something I'd like to elevate as a need to come together to address and make sure that everyone in our communities have equal access to sanitation and clean water. Which brings me to the definition of water equity. What is water equity? As defined by the U.S. Water Alliance, there are 4 main pillars to water equity. Ensuring that all people have clean, safe, affordable drinking water and wastewater services. And this, affordability is a really big issue. Affordability, where we have different prices for base water costs from area to area. And then, of course, water quality. Community sharing in the economic, social, and environmental benefits of water systems. So that's in workforce development. If there's contracts for replacing infrastructure, are community members able to take the contracts for that? Who is getting those contracts? And is that money staying in the community, or are they from out of state? Communities have an active engagement in the decision-making process, being at meetings, being asked to participate in what their communities could look like moving forward. And then, as we heard from a panelist earlier, resilience in the face of floods, droughts, and other climate risks. So that's about putting funding into these communities that are more climate vulnerable. Next, I want to talk about diverse water workforce, specifically the Water Fellows Program. So this program was started, Julie will know the exact answer there in the back, 5 years ago-ish, and it started as a program for DACA students. And then it transformed into a program for minorities and underserved communities who have not been part of the water conversation in the past. So these students get paid for a year to participate in this program. This year, we opened up the program to undergraduates and graduate students, and also to students from other marginalized identities, not just being minority members. Because of this, we had a tremendous interest in this program here at Colorado State University. Last year, we had 8 students in the program. This year, we had 30 applications, and we had funding for 12. So I asked John Tracy, I said, these students, I can't even tell you how amazing they are. Is there funding for more? And he said, let's do 20. So we have 20 students in this program from 15 different majors across campus. We was hearing from the other panelists about needing to hear those diverse perspectives. We have civil engineers, but we also have students from social work and family and consumer science and sociology and anthropology. And as we move forward and talk about how we can be resilient as a community and equitable, it is critical that we have those other perspectives, because water is personal. Water affects all of us. And by having these different ways that we come at the issue, we can really look at new and innovative solutions. Additionally to the diversity in the background of where they're from and in also their majors, we also have a diversity of what year they are. So we have first year all the way through PhD. I opened it up to graduate students because I thought, these undergraduate students might not even know that graduate school is an option for them, and to facilitate those conversations and that learning between the two student types. This year, we also received funding from CSU SPUR to have a pilot program in Denver. We've partnered with Metro State University to kick off our first cohort of Denver Water Fellows, and with 5 students and 4 majors represented. And we have a mixture of third year all the way through master's students for this program as well. So as you can see, we have some photos here. We went on a field trip and we partnered with the City of Fort Collins, and we took the students to the river. I was surprised that there are many students who hadn't been there. And so it's like, what an amazing opportunity to not only talk about water and learn about water, but to actually see water and learn about it on the river. Additionally, we take students to conferences. The top right photo, we were at the Colorado Waterwise Conference. And then the bottom left, we went to the Water in the West Conference last week, where the students had the opportunity to meet Secretary Vilsack, Colorado Commissioner Kate Greenberg, and also representatives from Senator Hickenlooper's staff. They also were able to be an active participant in the conference and introduce moderators. So, and then they also were randomly asked, the middle picture there, to do a podcast in the middle of the event. So these kind of opportunities are what get students excited about being in the water workforce. We also have monthly meetings and we bring in experts. So if you're interested, we'd love to hear from all of you on different water topics, because there's so much variation in careers that you can do in water. And we want to expose students to all the different opportunities, because you never know what will spark them to a lifelong career in water. And another effort that we're working on is equitable access to information. We all know that water is a critical issue to all of us, but not everybody has access to that information. The majority of the water education information is only available in English, and we have 22% of Colorado residents who are Spanish speaking or who are Hispanic. So there is a big opportunity right now to change that. And all of you can be a part of that as well. Because when we have the community meetings, when we have the conversations to really have the community be active participants, we need to make sure that everybody can participate. So here are some interpretation and translation services. One of the common things that I hear is that, well, Jessica, we don't have someone who can do a presentation in Spanish. And you don't have to, because there are people who will do live interpretation for you. Before I got into this line of work, specifically in language justice and equitable access to information, I thought that whenever you had a translator, you would have someone standing next to me and I would say hello, and they would say bienvenidos. And then the whole presentation would be double the length. But that's not the way it works. They use iPods. That's not an iPod. That's what always comes to mind. It's like a little listening device and with a channel, and there's someone doing simultaneous interpretation. They are talking as I am talking and translating it for those who need to hear it in a different language. So translation is the translation of written content. So like my slides, for example. Interpretation is having that auditory translation of simultaneous. And this can be done virtually. It can also be done in person. They are truly remarkable to work with, to have that skill set of being able to think and speak in multiple languages simultaneously. It's truly amazing. I work with the Community Language Cooperative. Their website is here, and they have all of the equipment, and they charge a very reasonable rate of $75 an hour. So I highly encourage you all to check them out and to try to integrate that into the work that you're doing. So with our Language Justice Initiative, we're looking to translate existing educational materials, offer bilingual classes in English and Spanish. We're going to be working on creating a Spanish resources page. And then really the change of mindset is thinking about any new content that we create needs to be in multiple languages, because if you start with just continuing on doing English only, then you have to get funding. You know, a lot of us need funding to do that translation because there is a cost. And so then that stops the forward momentum of making sure that your materials are equitable and in multiple languages. Inclusion, thinking about including and making other perspectives, ideas, identities, backgrounds welcome in these conversations. And by having the ability for people to participate in the language of their heart, they feel more welcome in those spaces. So when we're thinking about our path forward, we really need to reframe our outlook, reframe our mindsets, and think about the language that we're using, because language is powerful. So a reframe, an example of a reframe is from Spanish materials are not being used. And that leads to the assumption that people who speak Spanish don't care about the content or are just not interested. The reframe of that is we are not adequately reaching Spanish speakers. And so thinking of it from, instead of, well, it's their problem, they're not interested, to it is our problem and responsibility to better reach them. Also look in your own companies and examine existing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. What's working well? What can be improved? And are there opportunities to increase staff knowledge on DEI practices? There's a lot of tremendous trainings out there to increase your own understanding of ways to be more inclusive and thoughtful in working with community members. Also ensuring diverse representation in the room. Who's in the room? Who should be in the room? And I've heard other panelists speak to this too, but also thinking to bring in different backgrounds as well. Because with having that diverse background, we can get more robust solutions. And then finally, this sort of work is uncomfortable. We need to lean into that discomfort. It's uncomfortable to say we haven't been doing it as the best that we could. It's uncomfortable to say we've been leaving out people from this discussion. But sitting and leaning into the edge of that discomfort is where we learn and improve. I think about my kids and how I don't want them to be comfortable their whole lives. I want them to be uncomfortable because that comes from new experiences and new learning opportunities. So as we move forward, the path towards diversity, equity, and inclusion is really to keep learning, to listen and be authentic with people. People know when you're being authentic, to truly care and listen to understand, to work with community connectors. The Environmental Justice Task Force had a recommendation of working with those community connectors. A lot of municipalities and governmental groups ask me, how do we reach these diverse communities? And it's by connecting with people who are already trusted and work in those communities. Have a community-led identification of issues. In the past, a lot of times we go into a community and say, this is your problem, instead of asking them, what are your problems? And how can we help? Remove as many barriers to engagement as possible. Have in-person, virtual, just like we are here tonight. Childcare, for those of us who bring our child to meetings. Have food and incentives for people to participate. The community has valuable knowledge as well. How can we show them that we value their knowledge and their insights into the communities that they've been a part of? You will make mistakes, we all do. Just learn from them and continue to improve. Because I'm an educator, I have a robust resources page. I love all of these recommendations because a lot of people ask me, well, where do I start? And start from where the people who have been put in time and talked with the community have made these recommendations and ways for us to move forward. And finally, here are some ways to engage. Be an advocate and an ally for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and bringing in those diverse perspectives. Examine how you can incorporate language justice or equitable access to information into your work, your organization. Keep learning. I put a QR code here because it's for the children. So I have shamelessly put up there our fund to sponsor the Water Fellows program. I'm currently applying for a grant to spread this program across Colorado to have more and more opportunities for students from all across the different regions to have access to water professionals and get excited about the water careers. Share your water experience with our students. Please reach out to me if you're interested in connecting with our students in serving as we're looking for internships, by the way, for this summer. That's also a new part of the program. We really want to connect students to real world applied work in water. And then you can also, that's my last point, you can also, again, host an intern. And here's my contact information. I look forward to hearing from all of you and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, Bill's got a question.
Is the primary source of your funding universities related, or are there other specific sources, or are you constantly making an effort to get more grants?
I will take any funding. We have a diverse set of funding streams. We do get support from the university, which we're very grateful for, but we also have opportunities to search for grants and partnerships with different types of organizations. So Colorado Water Conservation Board is the grant that I'm going after for expanding the Water Fellows program, but I've also done partnerships with municipalities and nonprofits, different organizations who are interested in supporting the work and expanding it. And also, I will be looking for specific organizations to partner as we move regionally, because I think they can offer that really hands-on support to those local water fellows.
Thank you. Other clarifying questions for Jessica before we move on to our final, very brief portion before Q&A. Commissioner Qualis has a question.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jessica. I believe in your presentation you referenced CSU SPUR. Can you say a little bit more about CSU SPUR?
I would love to. Oh, Karen's going to do that in the next slide. But I will say
No
that
stealing thunder.
the buildings are amazing. They have been a lot of years of effort and cooperation that have brought those buildings together, and they're a tremendous opportunity and learning space, and we look forward to engaging with them and partnering with them more and more. Thank you.
All right. I think we're going, Jessica, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so Karen is going to wrap